This week's Breeders' Cup Challenge race is Saturday's $1 million Rico Woodbine Mile, a win and you're in the Fan Duel Mile division presented by the Permanently Disabled Jockeys Fund. In recent years, the Woodbine Mile has been a key prelude to the Breeders' Cup, producing 5 Breeders' Cup Mile winners in the last 13 years, and Saturday's field has a fascinating mix. Number 1, March to the Arch, and number 6, Admiralty Pier were 1-2 in last month's King Edward Stakes, the local prep for the Woodbine Mile. Number 3, Cheryl Spite is a lightly raced 3-year-old, 2 for 2, whose planned Kentucky Derby start was derailed by a fever. Number 4, Starship Jubilee is a 7-year-old mare who has 5 career stakes wins at Woodbine and recently won the Ballston Spa at Saratoga. Number 7, Value Proposition, is yet another Seth Klarman, Chad Brown turf specialist who had a bit of a rough trip as a beaten favorite last time out in the Poker Stakes at Belmont Park. And last but not least, 2019 Preakness winner War of Will, who got back on the winning track in July at Keeneland, winning the Maker's Mark Mile on grass. So, Mr. Jerry Bailey, it is a very interesting field. It's a fairly evenly matched field. You could go a lot of different directions here. Where do you want to start?
Well, I think we have to start with Mark Casse. To me, he's got the first and second choices in the race. The headliner would be War of Will. I mean, he won the Preakness, and he's certainly the most recognizable name in the field, at least to most people. But the funny thing is as I'm looking through his races, to me, his reputation might be slightly better than what he's actually been. I mean, he's accomplished a little bit, but there's horses in here that have better numbers and that have run faster. And War of Will, he doesn't get his regular jockey, Tyler Gaffalione, because of the travel restrictions between the two countries. And he's not an easy horse to ride. He's got to be timed just right. His mouth is a little light. And Rafael Hernandez is a good little rider from what I've seen. I haven't studied him a lot. And he's a good rider, but this horse is hard to ride and hard to time because you have to time his run just right.
Now, he did settle pretty nicely last time out in the Maker's Mark Mile. That's something that I was really paying close attention to see he can get a little aggressive, as you pointed out, can get just a little bit keen in the early part of his races when he's not allowed to roll. And he seemed to settle pretty nicely back in third. Wasn't fighting Gaffalione at all that day. So at least that's a plus. But one of the, he's obviously known, more to your point, for winning the Preakness Stakes. But people think back on the Preakness Stakes, he got the most quintessential trip in the Preakness that any horse could possibly get.
And look, he is built for turf because really his biggest asset is being fairly tactical, but waiting till the last minute. So we know turf racing, whoever finishes fast usually is in the mix, and that's what he wants. But I really don't think this long stretch at Woodbine is a benefit to him, because he just has more time to make the lead with a furlong left. And I don't think he's the best when he makes the lead that long, that much left in the race. Look, he'll be close, but I think so many things have to go his way. He's harder to ride, a new rider. I'm going to go elsewhere.
All right. He also carried 118 pounds in the Maker's Mark Mile, so he'll pick up 6 in the Woodbine Mile. That doesn't sound like much, but on turf, the finishes tend to be so well bunched that it could make a length difference, and that could be the difference in the outcome of the race. Now, the other Casse horse, March to the Arch, who has 2 wins out of 2 starts on turf at Woodbine. So we know he likes the course okay, and he comes off a win in that prep race. Good number, looked pretty good doing it.
Yeah, I mean, of the Casse horses, I like him slightly better. And look, it's just such an even race. There's about 4 or 5 in here that it's hard to separate. And I don't mean to knock War of Will, but I just think this March to the Arch is slightly better on this course. And for this reason, he does like the longer stretch. He seems to find trouble a lot in his races. But with Woodbine, the sweeping turn, the length of the stretch, horses generally get a chance to run once they straighten out. Usually the best horse wins at Woodbine because of the long stretch. And by virtue of his win in last out there on that turf course, I like him. And his talent level is equal or slightly better than War of Will, I think. So I think he gets the better trip, and it's more beneficial to him.
He might be able to save ground. Of course, most people watching this would realize that at Woodbine, a mile on turf is actually run around 1 turn because of their 1.5-mile turf course. So that's something to keep in mind watching the race as well. Now, we can't talk about a turf race in North America without talking about Chad Brown.
Right.
And he's got yet another one, a value proposition. We saw him on our air in the poker stakes at Belmont. We made a lot going into that race about, you mentioned War of Will's difficult to ride, about how tough value proposition is to ride as well.
Because he leans in the stretch. He lugs in almost every race he runs. And it cost him the other day. I don't think it cost him the win, but it cost him momentum because there was a horse inside of him trying to make a run middle of the stretch. And he was lugging in so badly that that his rider had to pull him off again. He looked back. He thought he was bothering another horse. But value proposition never runs straight and true through the stretch. He always wants to lean in a little bit. And I don't think he can do those kind of things and beat this bunch of horses.
It was Irad Ortiz on him in the poker. Luis Contreras has the mount on Saturday in the Woodbine Mile. And the mare's an interesting one as well, Starship Jubilee, because she not only runs well at Woodbine, and she's got a history of running well at Woodbine, but she runs some very competitive numbers when she's at the top of her game.
And she's 5 for 8 at this distance at 1 mile. Look, she did win at Boston Spa at Saratoga, as you pointed out earlier, but she comes off a beat in the Diana. It was kind of a curious ride because Jose Ortiz kind of strangled her back. I mean, she's a filly that's forward anyway, and he just gave the race, I thought, to Rushing Fall and the filly that was on the lead that day. And he really wrangled her back early in the race. Then she settled fine, and she had no excuse from then on. But I just think she runs better a little free, no matter where she is. She really ran well at Florida early this winter. I just don't know if she's good enough to beat a March to the Arts or War of Will.
You know, she'll carry 121 pounds. She actually will get 5 pounds from War of Will. I mentioned War of Will was picking up 6 pounds. He's actually picking up 8 pounds. He's in at top weight with 126 pounds. Now, one more horse to mention, the 3-year-old going against older horses, Cheryl Spite, who is a very interesting horse, A, because they were going to run him in the Kentucky Derby and those plans fell through. And B, with only 2 races under his belt, the first against older horses in a maiden and then in the Marine Stakes on Polytrack, you really don't know how far the upside is on this horse at this point.
He's definitely the wild card. That's pretty impressive to me, no matter where you run, to break your maiden and then come back and win a stake. I realize I don't know what the horses were he was beating in the Marine at Woodbine on the synthetic surface, but it's pretty impressive that he was able to do that. He would have to improve more than he improved from his maiden to the stake win in order to be competitive with these.
But he could easily do that in only his 3rd lifetime start. By the way, the synthetic racing surface at Woodbine is Tapeta, not Polytrack. This race, however, is on grass. The Rico Woodbine Mile, the 9th race on Saturday's outstanding 12-race card at Woodbine. Post time scheduled for 5:39 p.m. Eastern Time. And aside from being a Breeders' Cup Challenge win in your in race for the Breeders' Cup Mile, this is a good race for bettors to pay close attention to. In 9 of the last 14 years, at least one of the horses from the Woodbine Mile was part of the winning exacta in the Breeders' Cup Mile.